Why, hello there. It's been a while, hasn't it? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Don't adjust your screen, but your old pal Jacob is finally back to talk a little bit of hockey. So, yeah, let's actually go ahead and talk a little hockey. Finally, with the weather starting to cool down, we're officially into fall, and training camps and preseason officially underway. I figure I'd quick pop back on and, well, try to actually do this a little bit more than I did last year because, well, I really didn't make a whole lot of Minnesota Wild videos in 2024, 2025, but let's just say there was a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes and I really won't get into. Plus, my own mental sanity by about January was pretty much shot with this team, considering literally everybody at some point, minus two players, were injured. We literally only had two players play the entire season. Well, either injury or suspension or. Yeah, Don't think I really need to go back into that. But, with that said, they still made the playoffs, still got bounced in the first round because of a Gustav Nyquist skate, blah, 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 blah. Anywho, again, enough about that. Now, we're officially on to 2025. And for the first time in a while, there really wasn't a whole lot of stuff to talk about really in the off season outside of like really two or three things. And thankfully, one of them got resolved. We only picked up like a couple of players. Well, three, I think, technically. One of them we brought back after a couple years. And, well, the third thing, and probably the biggest topic, yeah, we'll get into that here in just a minute. But I figured with, hockey coming back and stuff like that, I figured, well, let's just go ahead and recap. So, basically, the biggest thing that happened in, free agency and stuff like that is the Minnesota Wild brought back Nico Sturm. They signed or traded for Vladimir Tarasenko, which, if, many Minnesota Wild fans, especially, over the last 10 plus years or so, know how good Vladimir Tarasenko is, or at least was back in his prime. I mean, I'm pretty sure he has the. Anyway, regardless, he has, more than killed the Wild on several occasions with his goal scoring. But it just wasn't quite working in Detroit, so we trade for him, and now he's probably going to be a second line winger. And then, like I say, we also brought in some Iowa Wild depth. I think probably the biggest name is Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who, if I remember right, was probably most notably with Colorado a couple years ago during their Stanley Cup run. So, some depth, a veteran winger who can come in when need be. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up the off-season news and stuff like that as far as, like, signings and stuff like that. But, yeah. Now to kind of move on to basically part two of here, I'm going to go ahead and kind of predict the lines and stuff like that, and then we'll save the big news for the end because, well, yeah. Let's just say there's been some tense times in Minnesota, in the state of hockey. We'll just, we'll talk about that here in a minute. But, I'll go ahead and kind of predict who I think is going to be, which lines are going to be who. And then once we actually get the official roster going into opening night, we'll see how close I actually am. Probably, I don't know, I'll probably be fairly accurate because I kind of have an idea, but let's just go ahead and dive into it. So the top line, at least probably as of opening day, is looking like it'll probably be Kirill, Marco Rossi, and Matt Boldy, probably? Just because, well, that kind of leads into one of the other topics. Matt Zuccarello is already hurt. Apparently he got hurt right before training camp, and Oh boy, this team cannot get any luck with it, with health, like, at all. In fact, we also had a scare with Zeev William just the other night, taking a puck off the hand, but sounds like he's going to be all right. So, thank the sweet baby Jeebus. That's all I'm going to say there. But anyway, so yeah, top line, if I had to predict, was probably going to be Krill, Rossi, and Boldy. Second line is probably going to be a combination of, I'd say, like a guy, either like a Danila Yurov, maybe a Liam Ogren, with Joel Eriksson Ek and Vladimir Tarasenko. Third line is probably going to be Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman, and maybe, like an Ogren or something like that, I guess. I have a feeling we're going to be using a couple of our young guns, so I wouldn't be surprised if Ogren is either on the second or third line to at least start. Granted, will he actually finish there? I don't know, but anyway. And then going on to the fourth line, probably going into the fourth line then, I will say Yakov Trenin, Nico Sturm, maybe Marcus Johansson. Or at least that's kind of what I hope. Marcus Johansson's a fourth liner, but he's probably actually going to be our second liner, and then Ogren's going to be, I don't know. So, yeah. So my official lines for the forwards are Kaprizov, Rossi, Boldy. Then we'll go probably, honestly, as much as I hate to say this, Johansson, Ek, and Vladimir Tarasenko. Third line will probably be Foligno, Hartman, Ogren. And then fourth line will probably be Trenin, Sturm, and again, either like a Danila Yurov or someone like that, basically. And then over onto the defensive core side of things, well, Jonas Brodin will be out for a pretty decent chunk of the start of the season. So, whoop-dee, that is a lot of fun. Thankfully, knock on wood, Jared Spurgeon's still healthy. Watch, now he's going to go down with an injury because I said that. But regardless, so if I had to guess who our D pairings are going to be, it's probably going to be Middleton, Faber, Bouillon, Spurgeon, and then maybe Juracek and Bogosian. But I'll kind of see if like Carson Lambos or any of those guys take over as well. So, yeah, if I had to predict, I'm going to go Middleton, Faber, Spurgeon with Bouillon, and then Bogosian with either Juracek or Lambos, depending on who wins it out of training camp. And then, of course, Gustafsson and Wallstedt. So, yeah, like I say, that's pretty much just kind of my, not really watching a lot of preseason thoughts and opinions on that. I might try to make a video after one of the preseason games. We'll see, just because I do have to work this week and stuff like that, and preseason games are kind of hard to find, so. But, yeah. Now on to the last chunk, and probably the most important thing here. Oh, boy. Well, we were able to at least get one of our guys signed. That's right, Marco Rossi signed his 3-year tender. Whether or not he actually plays the full 3 years, that remains to be seen. And, well, probably the biggest elephant in the room, and why I wanted to save this for last is because, well, Kirill Kaprizov still hasn't signed his contract, supposedly, turning down an 8-year, $16 million per. Definitely not, leaving me with the warm and fuzzies inside. However, I wonder if, again, in my opinion, there's no proof of this or anything like that, and throughout various media and stuff like that I've heard is, I would not be surprised if this is more of a term thing than maybe necessarily a money thing, or this could also be a stalemate waiting to see what McDavid does. I don't know, because Kaprizov still has another year on his contract. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch. Like I say, I'm not quite on, red alert, klaxon alarms, everything going off, and, the sky is ending. However, this is probably, no, I can probably actually even confidently say this. He is probably the best Minnesota Wild player we've ever had. If not, he's going to pass Gaborik here pretty soon, as long as he stays with Minnesota. And I know a lot of, especially the older Wild fans, are still having PTSD flashbacks of Marian Gaborik ceremoniously or non-ceremoniously just leaving. Which, yeah, I can see why that'd be a little, tender situation, especially because it's not like the Wild have had a lot of, star firepower, they don't really have a Sidney Crosby, an Evgeny Malkin, an Alex Ovechkin, a Connor McDavid. Kirill Kaprizov is that guy for Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see how this, shapes up and just progresses moving forward here. But, again, I'm not ready to hit the panic alarm. I'm not ready to, riot in the streets or anything like that. But this is a very, very sensitive subject that I hope gets fixed sooner rather than later. So yeah, I think that'll pretty much just kind of wrap up this sort of messy preamble. Like I say, I will try to make more Minnesota Wild videos. It just kind of depends on how the schedule falls and stuff like that. Now, whether or not I make recaps after the games and stuff like that, we'll just have to wait and see. But I definitely plan on making more videos this year than I did last year. Just because, again, as I stated earlier, had some stuff happen last year in the personal life, as well as, by the time January and February hit, my mental sanity with this team was at alarming levels of bad. Even more so than the Minnesota Vikings, if you know anything about, my Vikings videos and stuff like that, and Vikings fandom, yeah, it was not good. But, yeah, new year, new season, hopeful, with good expectations and stuff like that, and, yeah, no, I think that pretty much will sum this up. Like I say, once we get the official rosters, then I'll kind of give my overall thoughts and opinions on how I feel this season will actually go. And then, if I remember it, I think we either host Columbus or we travel to Columbus. I think we host Columbus as our first game yet again this year. So, until we meet again, this is Jacob. Have a good one.